I tend to run away from conflict. A lot of the times I will just get up and I'll walk away. And it's something I need to work on. I know that. I think it's just because I've never been really showed how to handle conflict. So the first thing I do is like, you're blocked and I'm never talking to you again.
Valid.
But that's not the right way to go about solving a conflict, and I'm working on it. But I think the way you should let it go is like,
I am like a huge like conflict avoider. I I don't know. I just don't really like engaging in conflict that much. I mean, it depends a lot on context and like what kind of conflict it is and like who it's with and whatever. But I feel like in general, I try to avoid conflict as much as I can. But I feel like I do allow myself like passive aggression. I think. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Like, detach myself from these emotions before I go in and try to communicate about this conflict. Like, I will think about like, how am I going to bring this up?
I guess we're talking about like detaching yourself, but like, what if the other person isn't calm? Like, does that sway your calm demeanor?
Welcome to season 4 of the Real Love, Real Talk podcast. We are glad to have you back. On this season, you can expect conversations led by our young people around various topics within the conversation of teen dating, violence awareness, and healthy relationship promotion. Some audiences may find this subject matter triggering. We encourage you to reach out to a trusted adult, family member, or friend. You can always find additional resources in our show notes or on our website, startstrongboston.org. Hi, my name is Marie. I'm 17 years old and I use any pronouns. I am going to pass it off to Jasmine to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Jazz. I'm 15 years old, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm in the 10th grade, and I'm going to pass it off to Janae to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Janae. I'm a program manager for Start Strong, and I'm actually going to throw it to Jazz to introduce our theme.
Today, we are going to be talking about conflict resolution, where we will discuss how to process conflict during the incident and after. Conflict resolution can be a difficult thing to talk about, especially if you aren't a great problem solver. Taking your emotions and actions into account when dealing with a conflict is very important because it can affect the way you respond towards the situation. And I'll pass it to Marie to talk about our first topic.
So our first topic under the theme of conflict resolution is how to process during a conflict. This is important to conflict resolution because how you process and think during, like in the middle of a conflict, will affect like your next choices and how you choose to approach it thereafter, which can affect like the ending of the conflict and how you resolve it and if you resolve it. So, yeah. Our first question is, what is the value of letting conflict go?
I think just for your own personal mental health, that's like another big factor when it comes to letting conflict go. Because I know when people do have a conflict, or me, for example, I get very, very tense when I do have a conflict going on, even when the person's not present or the situation isn't like currently, like I'm not arguing with someone in front of me right now, but like I have a conflict and I'm at home and I'm thinking about it and I'm tense. Once you get to the point where you can just let it go, I feel like all that also goes with it. All that stress you build when you have conflict with someone or something.
I totally agree with that point. It's like, I think it's really beneficial for just personal well-being, because it's like, I mean, typically it's really upsetting if you're constantly ruminating on like a conflict, whether it's like actively, like when it's not actively happening or unfolding. If you're just constantly thinking about it and that's like the one thing that's on your mind, it's most likely going to be pretty distressing. Our next question is, what are some ways to communicate during conflict? I personally think that like, at least as a first approach, the best approach is like to be calm and to just like, to not seem super, I mean, of course, if it's a conflict, you're most likely going to have like emotions involved with it, and maybe you're going to be feeling really passionate about it. But, like, I feel like it's important to not get like too caught up in those emotions, because it can kind of distract you from like the main point and maybe cause you to escalate the situation in a way you didn't want to, because you were so focused on how you were feeling, which I mean, you know, is natural, but it's like it's important to kind of step back and like, I don't know, like kind of detach yourself a little bit. I mean, not like completely, you know, detaching yourself from the situation because like you're in the situation, but just like not letting it completely like blindside you.
So you mentioned like being calm, finding a way of kind of like stepping outside of yourself in a sense is kind of what I was getting in that second part.
I think, I don't know if this is like a silly way to think about it, but think about representing yourself like you're a lawyer kind of, because lawyers typically, like for a case, they're not going to be, well, I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like typically they better represent their client and the case if they're like calm and collected and just presenting the facts rather than getting super worked up and like throwing things around the courtroom, because then people tend to like not take you as seriously. So yeah.
Kind of like being objective. Like if this is, like if something happens and that is the reason, right? Like why you all might be in conflicts, making sure you like keep that, like that reasoning at the forefront in a sense, like remaining objective.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hearing too.
And kind of, I feel like kind of just really expressing yourself as clearly as possible with your words, if that makes sense. Like just like instead of acting angry and like expecting that to get your point across and argue for you, like just coming out and saying, hey, this really upset me because, you know, XYZ.
To, like, what does it look like to detach yourself, like, to you in a conflict?
Just stepping aside. This is what I was gonna say. I remember. Stepping aside and like reflecting on yourself first. That's what I always like to do when I'm in a conflict. Reflect on like what I'm going to say. Like detach myself from these emotions before I go in and try to communicate about this conflict. Like I will think about like how am I going to bring this up.
I guess we're talking about like detaching yourself, but like, what if the other person isn't calm? Like, does that sway your calm demeanor? Does that sway, you know, you still being objective and getting your point across?
I think I mean, it kind of depends on what you want out of the conflict or like how you want the conflict to end. But I think if you're looking for like an actual, like coming to like an agreement or like an agree to disagree or like something civil, I guess, and you want to like de-escalate, then it's important to kind of like, I mean, don't try and calm them down because like that's probably not going to work. But like giving them space to kind of calm down and then asking to like return back to the conflict when you guys are both calm, because that's like really the best way to keep it under control and like civil and not letting it escalate to a place you guys don't want it to escalate to. But I mean, if you want it to escalate, then I guess you can get angry too.
Yeah, I mean, like realistically, thinking about myself personally, I think I would probably get mad as well if the person is like coming at me in a way that I don't like, and I feel like they have this like agitated attitude, like they're not very respectful when they're trying to talk to me. I know that I will get annoyed, like most people will, but I think it's really important to just take a step back when you like hear the other person that is still kind of being hard-headed. Is that the right word to use? Take a step back and maybe like think, this is not the right time to do this. This person obviously is not mature enough to have this conversation with me. This conversation can be had a different day. And kind of just leaving it like that, or trying to handle that person's maturity in the moment. And if they don't, just like at that point, I think kind of not let it go, but like wait until the appropriate moment to bring it up.
What if that like moment never comes though?
You just gotta let it go, I guess. I don't know. Because I feel like if you can resolve a conflict with someone who doesn't want to resolve a conflict, right? So you can just take it on your end and say, okay, well, I can't keep arguing with you about this. You know, take the mature step and just separate yourself from that person. If they still, like, if that moment never comes, I think it's just time for you to separate yourself and kind of like internally let it go.
Would you relate? Anything you want to add?
I feel like if they're refusing to like calm down about the situation and like they refuse to try and resolve it in like a mature and like calm manner, then I feel like your only two options are to let it go, and just like completely cut it out from your mind, because at that point like there's nothing beneficial that can come out of like ruminating on it and like continuing to argue with them when there's like not going to be a good like ending to it. But I mean, if you feel like continuing the conflict, I guess that's also an option. Like if you, in your spare time, if you just want to argue, then.
I liked what you said. Like, I feel like both of you all are like, it's, you know, like when people say, like, we're going to match energy in a sense. And that's kind of what, like, I'm getting from that. Like, especially with that last point, like if, unfortunately, right, if the person wants to continue the conflict, it's up to your own discretion, right? Like if you want to let it go, right, and just be like, they're not ready to have this conversation, or the other is kind of what you was getting at, where the conflict just continues to fester and like there is no resolve. But I really loved how you guys were both like, nah, if it's not working the first time, maybe you take a step back, you know, like maybe you give it a day, couple hours. But if that person doesn't, like, you can't resolve a conflict. Like one person can't resolve a conflict.
Right.
Like both people kind of got to want it. I love that. Next question.
What does it look like to self-assess during conflict? I think. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go.
ahead.
Go, because I forgot what I said.
Okay. I think self-assessing really means taking a look at like how you're behaving. And I mean, I think it's important to like, because I mean, of course, if there's a conflict that you're a part of, you're most likely going to be advocating for yourself, rooting for yourself. But sometimes, like in the heat of the moment, you can kind of like get distracted by like the fact that it's so personal and close to you and like happening and unfolding within your own life that you kind of like sometimes like in a conflict, like you stop for a second and then you think and you're like, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong. Mm-hmm. But like sometimes you don't come into that point until it's like 34 hours and like 5 screaming phone calls or something deep, and then you're like, oh shoot, what now? So I think it's like self-assessing can kind of help prevent, well, not prevent coming to that point, but maybe like coming to that point a lot sooner before you've dedicated so much energy into this conflict, to just realize that like you're arguing for like the wrong position, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like really stepping back and just really thinking about it from like, again, like kind of more objectively and like outside of your own perspective, like instead of thinking of it as like Edward and I think of it as like person A and person B, and trying to think of it more generally as opposed to like the real life situation that's unfolding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I like what you like. Conflict is emotional. Like a wound has, you know, been created in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, we're very protective of our emotions. And sometimes, like you're saying, like, that light bulb doesn't go off until much later. But when you said, you know, sometimes people are able to be like, dang, no, I think I'm on the wrong side. What does communicating that, though, look like after you done been arguing, for, what did you say, 34 hours?
I mean, I think the only way to go about it is to be like upfront and like genuinely apologetic, because it's not going to be like, if you're insincere and your apology isn't improper, that's probably, I mean, it has the potential to just create an entirely new conflict. If you're like even though you're in the wrong and you realize it at this point, like dancing around it and refusing to like fully like take responsibility and acknowledge that, and take accountability. So I think if you are going to go down that path, it's important to just be like really genuine and owning up to your mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Be upfront. There was a second one. I know, take accountability, and then be sincere. That was the last thing. I like the third thing you said, and I think those are like actually really good like ingredients for a nice little recipe. Jasmine, what do you think? Self-assessing during conflict.
I was gonna say the same thing like that you said. Just taking a step back, like you were talking about, like it takes time to do it. You're not just gonna be like screaming at a person and then snap and be like, no, I can't do this. No, you're gonna finish screaming at him. But like, you have to like have the ability to admit your wrongs. That's like a part of self-assessing that I think. I lost what I was going to say.
Why is it important to admit you're wrong?
Because, I mean, in all conflicts, you have some fault. There's a conflict for a reason, so it's good to, like, be honest about what you have done to give the other person kind of, I don't know what's the word for it, but, like, not closure. That's not the word. I don't know. But there's this word where, like, the other person kind of gets this feeling of, like, okay, this person knows what they did wrong. I can maybe move on and resolve this conflict. And that's a better part of self-assessing. Like, self-assessing can lead to, like, a resolved conflict if you look internally at yourself.
Is reassurance maybe the word you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Right, though, like, wow, like, I don't have to explain word for word, bar for bar, like, what this person did to me. They're actually able to understand, right? Like, after the first time I said it. Because sometimes, like, when you have to repeat yourself a couple of times, I know I get annoyed. Mm-hmm. And that's, like, I think that adds another layer of tension maybe. But y'all are both really on it, so just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Yes, keep going. Was there another one?
There are two more. How can you check your emotions before you explode / get angry?
You kind of just went through that, no?
Yeah.
So should we move on to the last one?
Yes.
What are some things that occurred during conflict that can escalate or de-escalate the situation? I think some things that can escalate a situation is like diverging from the main point of the conflict. Like, if it's something about like a behavioral thing and then you get angry and you're arguing and you start bringing up other things and making it larger, that's definitely like a very efficient way to make the argument something bigger than it is and something that's more like hateful than it is, I guess. Like, if the argument starts on like something that actually happened and then you start making it bigger and about their character and like your entire relationship with the person, then it can get a lot more difficult to deal with, and the ending might get like a little bit messier. I think de-escalating, one of the easiest ways is like immediately trying to find like a middle point, I guess. I mean, it's not always possible, like definitely not always possible, but if it is, probably one of the easiest and quickest ways to like de-escalate and probably like resolve a conflict would just be like, I want this, you want that, let's each have, you know, some element that we're happy with, but like giving up a little bit for the other person, I guess. Yeah, thank you so much. Compromising, yeah.
I like that.
I also think, like, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I feel like the tone at, like, when you come at someone with a conflict and you're bringing something up, the tone really, really matters, because the tone sets the stage of how your entire conversation is going to go, and possibly future conversations that you have with this person. So I think if you're coming in with like this like aggressive tone, like you seem mad, obviously, like the person, it's going to escalate, because okay, you're mad, I can tell that you're mad, now I'm mad, because now we're mad at each other, now we're yelling. But to de-escalate, I think just going into a conflict with an open mind as well, like not being so closed off as like this person's in the wrong, this person's in the wrong, being like, okay, I can understand where you're coming from when you did this. Like being very like open, I think, can help de-escalate a situation, especially when both parties are very, very open to saying what they did wrong, you know, being respectful, having a respectful tone as well.
Tone is so big. What do you all think about like body language too in conflicts? Is that important?
Yeah, very much. I mean, body language and tone are like one of the two tellers, I feel, about how someone truly feels. Like someone can be like, I love your outfit so much, but like obviously that wasn't sincere. Like, so if someone comes to me and they have this calm tone, but their body language is like telling me that they're aggressive, that's going to escalate the situation, in my opinion.
What's an example of an aggressive, like, what might that look like? Like an aggressive body language.
Trying to think of it like more, not like more like passive aggressive way
Okay.
of a body language. I'm still thinking, but like I'm trying to think of more like passive, because I feel like if someone's being aggressive, like it's gonna be very obvious. So I'm thinking of like little situations where I'm like, are you annoyed? Like if somebody's like this, or they're like closed off a little bit, I feel like that can come off a bit as like passive aggressive.
So like arms crossed.
Yeah, like no eye contact, things like that.
I like that. I was asking for some examples, so I'm glad you threw that in there. Cause yeah, it like the example you used of like, I love your outfit. Like,
Outfit's so great.
you know what I'm saying? Like you're saying something nice, quote unquote, but you're even how you did, you crossed your arms, you leaned back, like your eyes also, they was rolling. You acted that really good. But like, it's different than what you said. You know, like they're not, like your body language and what you said did not add up. Do you have some examples to that?
I feel like I don't pick up on body language that much, because personally, like I feel like on me it doesn't mean as much. Like, like if that makes sense. I feel like what my stance is doesn't always properly convey how I'm feeling. Like for example, you mentioned like crossing arms. Sometimes I like cross my arms if I just like don't know what to do with my arms, and like don't want to seem like too, like if I want to seem nonchalant or whatever, but I like don't know what to do with my arms, I'll just, you know, fold them in. Or if I'm sometimes like when I'm feeling shy or like kind of reserved, like in an awkward space, sometimes I'll do that. Like I don't know if it might be kind of like a defense mechanism or whatever, kind of like coming off as don't talk to me, and that's like a subconscious thing, but I really don't mean it to be like aggressive in any way. It's kind of just like, I don't know, it's more natural for me.
I have like a vision of someone like standing, like I think that would give off like an aggressive vibe, but I don't know how to put it into words. Like it's like I don't know how to explain.
But you can visualize it.
I can visualize it, yeah, but I just can't put it into words for you guys. I'm sorry.
And that's okay, because you gave us some examples. And I loved that you added like the other side to the coin, right? Like it's not, each person is their own individual. And with that, it's not going to be like a one size fits all. Like for Marie, body language isn't, like you could have your arms like crossed, or you could be more into yourself, but that doesn't mean that like you're not present, you're not listening. If I was to say something to you, you wouldn't respond. And that's how, like, and so I think that's important for folks to keep in mind when they're dealing in conflict, because it's not like with the other person, that's how they reacted. But with this person, it's not the same. And so you really have to take into account like who that individual is. But for others, their body language is very much so like reflective of what it is they're thinking, what it is they're feeling, in a way that it doesn't connect, like doesn't make a connection to the words that they're saying, right? Like, yeah, I love that we got that, because it's nuanced. That's the thing. Like it's genuinely, I can't say this more, it's not a one size fits all. I love that. That was the last question, right?
It was.
I think we're going to pass it to Jazz for our second topic.
The second topic we will be discussing under conflict resolution is how to move on after the situation. When it comes to personal growth and moving on, it's hard to continue evolving if you're constantly lingering on something that has happened in the past. Being able to move on and sit down and process all of your emotions about the situation can help benefit you moving forward and your well-being.
Well, I feel like this is kind of corny, this is kind of lame, but like writing it out really does it is kind of helpful when trying to let go of something, like just getting it all out in one place so that you don't have to keep going over it like on and on again in your head. Like kind of just, I don't know, like getting your thoughts out in a way that's like clear and, I don't know, concise if you want, or just messy and angry, or like however you need to get it out so that it can leave you alone, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like journaling, right? This is what you're talking about?
Journaling, yeah. I remember there was this one conflict. I remember it was like really, really bugging me. And it was like it was especially irritating me because like I'm not going to go into detail, but it wasn't even really my conflict. It was kind of a conflict between two other people, but one of the people was my friend, and I was kind of getting angry like on their behalf. But it was just like, it was really irritating me, and I like couldn't stop thinking about it because I was just so upset. And one of the things that like kind of helps me to calm down, and like, cause I don't even really think about it anymore, even though it's like still kind of ongoing, but like just writing it out in my notes app and like getting all my feelings out there. And it was emotional, very colorful language, but like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. You could just type out how you're feeling and like what happened. And yeah, I feel like just having a record of what it is kind of helps to like not have to keep going over it in your head or something.
Yeah.
For me, like, I'm not gonna lie, for me, I'm not a person who handles conflict well. So I tend to run away from conflict. A lot of the times I will just get up and I'll walk away. And it's something I need to work on. I know that. I think it's just because I've never been really showed how to handle conflict. So the first thing I do is like, you're blocked and I'm never talking to you again.
Valid.
But that's not the right way to go about solving a conflict, and I'm working on it. But I think the way you should let it go is like, I was going to say completely separating yourself from the situation, but that's kind of just what I just told you not to do. So I guess addressing it, acknowledging that it's there, that it happened, and just removing your mind from it, but don't like completely push off the conflict. Like if it's brought up, acknowledge it, take it into account, whatever, like if you're talking to the person again after the conflict has happened, take their personal opinion into account or whatever, and just be able to kind of drop it and move on. I don't know. I'm not the best person to give advice.
Real quick, because like let's take it to like the larger you, right? Like, what messages do you all think young men get about resolving conflicts or like conflict resolution or what that might look like? And then on the other side, like what messages do you think like young women might be receiving about like conflict and conflict resolution? And then like, are they the same?
I feel like I see a lot of like videos where it's a young man and he's like talking about a breakup that he had and how it like motivated him to. It's typically like based in working out and like maybe like typically gaining more muscle, or sometimes it's like progressing in a career and like making more money, or but like a common theme of like a guy getting his heart broken and then kind of becoming cold and jaded and using that emotion and energy of like the breakup into like progressing, I guess, which is like, I mean, I can understand how it could like seem like a nice message. You know what I mean? Like instead of ruminating and like being heartbroken and wallowing in that sorrow, they like put it to good use and like put it towards a goal that they wanted to accomplish, and you know they did it. But I feel like pushing that too much can send kind of a harmful message about what moving on from a conflict is supposed to look like. Because I don't know. Because it's also, I mean, for some people that might be a healthy and effective way to like move on with their life, get it out of their head, you know, leave it in the past, move on to bigger and better things. But for other people, that's not going to work as well. They're not going to be able to completely like they're going to try too hard to force it away. But like, you know, like instead of acknowledging it and like accepting it and trying to work through it, trying too hard to dismiss it completely, which sometimes doesn't work and can kind of only make it, you know, come back worse in like, I don't know, a couple months, because you haven't really moved on. You just kind of try to ignore it, which doesn't work for everyone.
Right. Like, it's not many messages out there, at least not that I've seen, and I kind of see the same things that you are too, like, of like letting young men like know it's okay to sit in those emotions. Like, you don't have to like start going to the gym. You don't have to start like completely forgetting about what happened. Like, because sometimes, you know, moving on, you don't want to harp on it. You don't want to ruminate on it. But if you don't acknowledge it, it's like it happened. And it could show up later in a moment where you're like, oh, dang, I thought I moved on. Like, I was fine, you know? And then like something kind of hits you. Does that sound like what you're saying too? Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with what you said, Marie, like trying to prove that you're like quote unquote better than the person, or you're doing better than the person, or I have more money and he's broke now, whatever, that whole thing. I'm thinking back to when I was younger. Like, I used to hang out with this whole like group of girls and boys, and a lot of the times whenever we had conflict, our parents would be like, "Go fight it out," you know, to all of us, like fight it out. You know, I don't think that's like. I hope people aren't making their kids fight anymore, but but that was just something like I always grew up around, like, and I think it was mostly for young boys that I saw. Like, that's a kind of a difference there.
What about the young woman?
Young women, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like we didn't really, if we had a conflict, it was often brushed off. Like, oh, you guys aren't arguing for any serious reason. You're arguing about your dolls or something, which we probably were. But the boys were arguing about their Nerf guns. Like, it's the same thing, but I feel like a lot of people treated it so differently depending on who you were. Because I know, actually, I won't say that.
Do you think that like, because going off of that, do you think that like conflict between like two young men versus conflict between two young women, you feel like they're not taking a serious, like the same level of seriousness?
For sure.
Okay.
I feel like conflicts between two women, no matter the like subject matter, it's almost always seen as like petty and catty and like, why can't you two just like get along? You know what I mean? And like kind of just dismissed for any reason they can find. But like, this is gonna sound really lame, but I can't find like a better analogy in my mind to describe it. But like, if it's two males arguing, like it's like two lions like battling for dominance or whatever. Like it's seen as like, I don't know, they're both standing their ground in a way, and they're both like, you know, they're just both leaders and they can't back down or whatever, and they're both super strong and tenacious, and you know what I mean? And it's encouraged for like, and again, it doesn't matter the subject matter. They could be arguing over like Xbox versus PlayStation 4, or I guess PlayStation 5. My bad.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of time women's conflicts are often brushed off, like especially recently when it comes to like female rap. Right now there's a lot of conflict with that, and everybody's just like, ha ha ha, that's so funny, whatever. But then when it comes to two male rappers having conflicts, it's like, whoa, the biggest thing is it's the earth is gonna stop moving because they have beef, guys. Like it's this whole big thing, and I feel like people mock women's conflict. Like even like at school, there'll be like boys would mock, oh, let's do how girls fight. You know, like it's like a joke to people. People don't really take women's conflict seriously, and they often like put this men's conflict on a pedestal.
Okay. And how do you guys think? So we've kind of talked about like gender, and I'm sorry to like turn this real quick, but how then does race influence how conflict is viewed? Do we think that race influences how conflict is viewed?
Yes. It kind of depends on the conflict and like who's viewing the conflict. But I feel like, especially if it's, well, I guess specifically if it's like an interracial conflict, like certain views are like automatically cast onto certain people because of their race. Like no matter like how they're behaving in the conflict and like what they're arguing for, like maybe automatically, I mean, it depends on the, like whoever is viewing the conflict, obviously, because not everyone holds these, what are they called? Isn't it like implicit biases? So smart. Like not everyone holds like the same implicit biases. I think probably everyone has implicit biases, but not everyone has like this, you know, the same ones. But some people, because of like how they were raised or how they heard other people speaking, or just like however they got to the point that they are, they might see a Black person advocating for themselves and immediately like jump to viewing them as like aggressive or loud or unruly, or like just automatically viewing it as something negative or dramatic, because that's just either consciously or subconsciously what they are prone to believe. Whereas they might cast a different viewpoint onto someone of a different race, like automatically, like regardless of whatever other factors are, like could be influencing how they view the people in the conflict.
A certain situation popped into my mind when you said something about like interracial conflict. I was thinking, this is not funny, but I was thinking of Kanye West and Taylor Swift. Like when that happened, like it was a whole really big thing. And I felt like people kind of got on this Kanye hate train, even though I don't like Kanye West. But yeah, that was a really big thing. And I feel like people, like what you said about like that aggressiveness, people kind of took that, applied that to Kanye and kind of just like ran with it in a sense.
That was something. Like, whew, yeah, because
Or like Nicki Minaj and what's the Miley Cyrus? Was it her?
Miley Cyrus? I don't know.
Miley Cyrus and Nicki Minaj.
The VMAs. Miley, what's good? I guess, yeah, like going off what you're saying, I'm curious if as young Black individuals, right? Like, does that trope impact then how you navigate conflict?
Yes.
Like, yes?
Yes. I purposely don't go into conflict agitated because of that, like, angry Black woman trope. Like, that's something where I'm like, no, you're not getting, where it's something where, like, you're not getting the satisfaction of being like, she's an angry Black woman. Like, no, I purposefully do not get angry for that specific reason, and I shouldn't have to. I should have the right to get angry when I am, but like that's just steps that I take, especially if I'm in public or anything like that. Like those are steps I feel like I have to take in order to like be respected, have my conflict be taken seriously.
Yeah. Because like outside perception is, especially like when you're saying like you're in when you're in public, like, because the first thing people are going to see is that you're Black, right? Like that is automatically it, and then there are assumptions, right? That's like added on to that. Because I can relate to that too. You know, like it's definitely something that, like I think for me, it was harder to figure out how to then advocate for myself if I was always like keeping how other people viewed me in the back of my mind, you know, like especially when it comes to conflict. Marie, do you feel the same way?
I am like a huge like conflict avoider. I don't know. I just don't really like engaging in conflict that much. I mean, it depends a lot on context and like what kind of conflict it is and like who it's with and whatever. But I feel like in general, I try to avoid conflict as much as I can. But I feel like I do allow myself like passive aggression, because I mean, this kind of like I need to change this, but in my mind, I don't view passive aggression as like actual confrontation, even though it kind of is. And I need to like stop allowing myself to just like diss people, like when I'm upset, because that's not a proper way to go about conflict. But I feel like even when I am passive aggressive, I feel like, I mean, and I'm not sure if this is just like my own interpretation of it or like if I actually like have some basis in thinking this way, but I feel like even when I am like kind of being like not direct about it and like still keeping it like pretty low key and not like directly going after them, I feel like people typically like have a bigger reaction to that, like as if it is like an outright like aggressive confrontation. And I like I have been called like sassy before, and I know that's like it's just, you know, it's just a word, but like I don't know, I don't like being called sassy, even though I will admit like
You could be a little sassy.
yes, I can be a little sassy, but I'm still like, I don't know, I'm apprehensive about that word. I don't like it being used on me just because I feel like it automatically, you know what I mean, just because I know that like that's often something people associate together, like sassy and like being a Black female. So even if like that's not how they're thinking it, I'm automatically like put back a little bit, like because I'm worried that is how they're thinking about it, and that is what caused them to come to that specific word. You know what I mean?
Like you wonder, it gets you thinking about the connotation.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel it is like just with that specific word. I feel like if someone were to say that I'm like snarky, I've been called like snarky before because I've been snarky, but you know, that one I understand, that one I feel more. But I mean, I don't know, it might just be like a more personal thing that like I'm making that connection. Like whenever I hear the word sassy, I'm like, oh, they're, you know, making assumptions about my race. But like, yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
it is a bit of a touchy thing, I guess.
It's like a little, like, you know, it's like, it's like a little dance. What are we going to add?
I feel like I was gonna add, like, I feel like there's some conflicts where I won't address it because, like, say if I have a conflict with another black girl my age, if I am in a conflict with someone, another black girl my age, I will try to kind of break down the conflict, like make it less, what's the word, intense? I don't know.
Okay.
On purpose, because of like what you said, like the trope of being an angry black woman. I feel like a lot of people expect, like, I don't know why there's like this expectation that black women will like have conflict with other black women. So I feel like that's just something that I don't like. No matter how much I hate the girl, I can hate the girl so much, I will not like bring it up just because of these little tropes that we have. And it's sad that we have them. It's sad that they're placed onto us, not that we have them, that they're placed onto us. But it's like something, I don't know, something that I haven't outgrown and I need to. Like, I should not let what I do and who I have conflict with dictate on what other people think about my race and about my identity.
Right.
That's something I personally need to work on. But like, it's like this thing where like community, like the black community, very, very tight-knit community. I feel like let me stop talking. I'm sorry.
You feel like
I feel like if I do pursue a conflict with another black woman, it's like me going against my community almost. And I shouldn't have to feel like that, but it's like I do. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, what?
Sorry. Oh my God. I just thought that, like, I don't know, this has been like, I feel like kind of bouncing around in my mind from like time to time. And like, I don't know, I feel like I never really like really thought about it because I don't know. But I feel like I'm constantly, I mean, because this is America and because I'm black, I feel like I'm constantly, like, whenever I'm having any kind of interaction with a person, like, it's like at the back of my mind, I'm just like, I don't know, taking race into accountability, I guess. Like, just in like, like how it would look to in like an outsider or whatever. Like, I don't really know. But I feel like that's kind of like a big part of like how I think and stuff. Like, I feel like, because I feel like I expect other people to be thinking about it because this is America. So I feel like, I don't know, like I'll be in a room and like I'll be like, let's say I'm the only black person in there, like it'll be at like, it'll be on my mind, you know what I mean? I'll be like, I wonder if anyone else is really like paying attention to that. I wonder if anyone's making any, like, having any other thoughts about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes you like, it makes you hyper aware, like, of your, like, of what you're doing, of how you're being perceived. And also in that space too, it makes you think about, like, I guess in my mind, where I would feel, how I'd feel in that situation, like, okay, like, where do I fit, like, in this situation, in this room, in this hierarchy, like, where am I? And like, it's sucky because it's intentional, right? Like, because it's making you police your own body. And like, oof, and like, that's intentional, like with these tropes as well. Because they're made to make generalizations around things that, quite frankly, like, everybody gets angry, you know, like everybody might explode, but because of how race is viewed in this country and where black people are like placed in the hierarchy of this country, it makes you have to be extra careful. And I think it's just crazy though, for like, y'all are teens, you know, like, and you're supposed to be in the time of your life where you're making mistakes and acting out, but it's something in the back of your mind constantly, which is just like, it's sucky, but it shows just how like prevalent the like effects of racism can show up. in situations of you just sitting in a room and being the only Black individual in there. Like, y'all all most likely there for the same reason, or like, you know, like you're in a common space. Okay. Yes. What are some golden nuggets from this episode?
I think with conflict resolution, it's important to keep in mind, like, I don't know, that like, it's important to keep in mind how you conduct yourself and like, I guess your goals and how you're going to operate like within the conflict. Like, what do you want out of it for yourself? Like, if there's anything that you really truly want to get across to the other party in the conflict, and kind of really keeping those in mind so that, like, so as to not diverge from the main point of the conflict, because that's how you escalate it.
A golden nugget that I wanted to point out is like there's always two sides to a conflict, right? And I know like we can get caught up in our emotions, we can get angry, stuff like that, but it's always good to take into account your side and the other person's side and try to separate those emotions that you have. No matter how strong they are, you're gonna have to separate them and deal with the conflict head on. Please do like, don't avoid conflict, try to like end it there. Like, Thank you for listening, and look out for the next episode of the Real Love, Real Talk podcast. As always, check out our show notes for ways to stay in touch with us. Like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you might be joining us, and visit us at startstrongboston.org for more tools and resources.